Now it is springtime here in the Northern Hemisphere, so this is probably not the best time to do an indoor trainer review, but for my people down under, this may just grab your attention. So what I've got here is a direct rival to the Wahoo Kickr. I absolutely roasted the last Cycplus trainer that was sent to the channel. They emailed me about 4 or 5 months ago and said, look, we knew we had some issues with the last one with the overheating. The motor was a bit small. We've created and designed a whole new one, similar architecture, but just a massive motor. The T2 Cycplus trainer basically had a massive overheating issue because of this equation here, the simple power, torque and speed equation. Now at a set power at a low flywheel speed, so anything like a mountain bike that was on the trainer or a gravel bike gearing with a small front chainring, but the flywheel's not spinning very fast, at set power the torque needs to be increased. Now, how do you increase the torque, i.e. the resistance? You need current to that brushless motor. That means erg mode is on, and it's just not matching the power requirement. Piece of shit! Now, the more current you give it, the hotter it gets. Anyone who's worked with motors or designed electronics know that more current means more heat, and it just couldn't dump the heat fast enough, and intervals of about 4 or 5 minutes at 300 watts, it was just thermal cutout. It was protecting itself from overheating. Simply put, there was no way around that. I have used the T2 trainer with bigger chainring bikes, so like the road bike or the TT bike, and when that flywheel is spinning a lot faster, for the same power, the torque is reduced, so the current in the motor is reduced, and it didn't really have that overheating problem, but it was there in the small chainring. So if you're doing like out to Zwift or whatever it's called in the small chainring at high power, it would overheat very, very quickly. And that just came down to there's not enough thermal mass, the motor's not big enough, the diameter of the rotor of the motor wasn't big enough, and it just couldn't create enough reliable resistance without overheating. So I'll leave that video link in the description or somewhere on the screen here. Looking at it side by side, it's got an absolutely massive motor. So the brushless DC motor is basically twice the diameter of the old one. So not only has it got bigger coils, it's got more thermal mass. If the diameter is double, it needs half the kind of tangential force to provide the same braking to give the resistance. And one thing I really liked about the original one was kind of the architecture of it. The carry handle at the top was super convenient. Like some trainers, particularly the Kickr, is really hard to like move around and fold away and stuff. And one thing I really like about this is it's super solid when it's expanded. The legs are expanded, and the legs do tuck away very small. And I still use the T2, basically the TT bike is on the T2, when I'm doing kind of zone 2 efforts at high flywheel speeds, it's absolutely reliable, but anything in the small chainring at higher power, it does overheat. So is this new one reliable? They're touting it to be a Kickr competitor. In most regards, actually, the specifications surpass the Kickr, the latest Kickr, which is quite surprising, and it is targeted to be slightly cheaper. But the Kickr has a very, very good reputation for being reliable. It's like the go-to top-end trainer on the market, so they did have to price this a little bit below, otherwise no one's going to take a punt on it. And this goes for all trainers, basically. They're so expensive to ship because of like the volumetric cost of shipping, because they're 20 kilos or whatever. It's up to them to get it like spot on in the first place. So it's not in their interest to go and ship out replacements because you can't ship it back, it's too expensive. Let's put a couple of key features on the screen here. The price, basically $1,000 USD. It does have to undercut the Kickr. Now you can find the Kickr on discount at a lot of places, so I think they should price it slightly lower even so, because it is around the same kind of price. And without the reputation that the Kickr's got, that's a little bit risky. It's completely wireless if you want it to be, so there's no power supply needed, whereas the Kickr you always need a power supply. So you can power this without power supply and it works absolutely fine. All the Bluetooth and AM+ sensing still pairs with everything. The maximum power or the maximum resistance is actually quoted to be slightly higher than the Kickr. So this is quoting 2.8 kilowatts at 40k an hour, whereas the Kickr is only 2.2. I haven't actually tested that because I can't output that. I don't know who can. Maximum simulated gradient is actually quoted to be, I think, 0.27, whereas the Kickr is 0.2, I believe. Plus or minus 1%, sorry. I think that's the same as the Kickr. As you can see, it kind of matches or surpasses the Kickr in every respect, apart from I think there's one thing where this can only have one concurrent Bluetooth connection. I think the Kickr can have 3. Let's look at the unboxing, let's look at the ride data using the DC Rainmaker analyzer tool. The only thing it doesn't have is any sort of like dynamic bass. But as you can see here, I have actually 3D printed some little rubber feet, so it just tips a little bit more, so it's a bit kinder to the bike. I really don't like putting high output powers on bikes when they're really locked in rigidly on the trainer, because it concentrates the stress on the bikes in ways that outdoor riding doesn't. I've got the old T2 next to me, and the problem with that was at low flywheel speeds it overheated because the BLDC, the motor, direct drive motor, was not big enough. If the motor can't, produce that constant torque without overheating, unit goes into thermal cutout. So unboxing the new one, what we've got USB ant stick and a cable. Probably won't be using that because I'll just stick with Bluetooth. A quick release skewer, always handy. Some of their own indoor training software, won't be using that. User manual, probably will look at that. I do like a user manual. These parts, end cap adapters, they look to be the same as also a cassette adapter. They look to be the same as what came on the T2. And also, quite a nifty little mat there. Power brick looks to be the same as the old one with an inline switch. That's quite neat. What power is this rated to? 48 volts at 1.25 amps. So that's about 60 watts to power the unit. And then the rest of your wattage you're just dumping in heat. If you're at an event and you're warming up, you don't need to plug it into the mains, it will power itself, which is quite cool. So here's the unit. You can see straight away it's a much bigger than this one. And they've taken my feedback on board and they've literally made a new unit, which is awesome. I mean, they probably knew about this, but because these aren't increased in speed like your old school trainers with a belt drive, all of the braking, so the braking torque, has to be done by the BLDC motor. And you can see the BLDC motor on this one. This is the rotor of the motor with the magnets around the edge. This one is twice the size of this one, pretty much twice the torque. So if you look online, I think this one's rated to 60 Newton meters continuous and this one is 110, 120, so it's basically double the size. So it shouldn't overheat because those magnets are half the current because the diameter is double, basically. So if you've got a direct drive trainer like this, all the braking torque by the magnets has to be done on this. It isn't geared up like the belt-driven flywheel type trainers, which I actually quite like. But the problem with the belt drive trainers is they tend to be quite noisy, and they're actually more expensive to make because of the belt drive increasing the gear ratio. I think it's probably about 4 or 5 to 1 with the belt drive trainers. The flywheel on that small rotor has to be super well balanced, otherwise you're going to get a shitload of vibration and noise. You've got the additional belt wear. China is the place for brushless DC motors, so get rid of all the belts, get rid of all the pulleys, and just use a massive BLDC motor. Is this worth the money at 999 USD over something like, you know, your normal Kickr or the Kickr Move, which is about 1400 USD? This is a top line trainer. Is it going to be as good in the experience? Let's find out. Let's get her out of the box. Now this, I think, is about 5 kilos heavier than the old one. Now I'm trying not to do my back in getting out of the box. Clamp the old legs. Learned that in Germany. And instantly you can see she's bigger than the old one. Quite a lot taller, quite a lot bigger. Let the swearing commence. This is why I leave one bike on the trainer at all times. I hate doing this. Oh, first go from behind the camera tripod. I think we're in, as the bishop said to the schoolboy. Right, finger tight first, then pedal. Make sure everything's settled in. Give it a rock, push down on the seat, tighten again. The instructions are actually very good. Very clear, very good CAD images. No Chinglish, everything is spelt correctly. And there's just a few guidance on points like this. Don't block the infrared sensor. I think that is to do with cadence measuring. So on that side at the top, there is a sensor hole, and I think it's to do with measuring your heel basically for cadence, which is a interesting way to do it. Tells you how to do quick release versus through axle installation. There's obviously an app, but it doesn't need calibration because it's direct drive apparently, so I'll probably just leave that. Right, first of all we're going to do some tests in the small chainring, which is the scenario where the old one used to heat at a low flywheel speed and moderately high power. And if that goes well, we'll do a power meter comparison with the venerable Quark, which are benchmarked exactly the same, well, to within 1% of the Ferro Asioma pedals. Just to give you a note of the background noise, just to give you some idea, that's the background noise. So small chainring first, and then if it passes that sustained high current, high heat test, we'll do a longer effort, 280 or something, after a warm-up, and we'll see how it stacks up to the Quark, which I'll be recording on the new Magine 606. First impressions are, it's pretty quiet. Pretty similar to the other one, to be honest. Doing a 20-minute warm up. My head unit's recording the Quark. Swift is recording the T3 trainer. The cadence is also taken from the T3 trainer. It's super quiet. And even that cassette's quiet, to be fair. Chain's not got the most amount of lube on it. I use squirt wax. And it's probably needs a top up, but so far so good. So as you just saw, I was using the road bike with the Quark to test this T3 trainer and get this data set. But before we do that, let's benchmark the Quark against the Vivero Assioma Shimano pedals, which are kind of my go-to reference for when doing indoor trainers. Now this is actually an outdoor ride where I've got Vivero and the Quark on the same bike. And if we scroll down to the summary, you can see the average power for the Quark is about 2 watts higher, so about 1%. So bear that in mind when we benchmark the Quark against the trainer. So this is the Quark versus the T3. Now this is quite, I would say, a hard test. It's indoors, it's quite hot. I didn't really have a fan running against the trainer. I have no air conditioning. And this is a 20-minute warm-up at 200 watts. Zwift difficulty is set to maximum, so maximum trainer resistance. And I did I think a 280 watt interval with some sprints at the end for 25 minutes. So if we zoom into that set, we can see here average power on the Quark is 3 watts higher than the T3 trainer, which is recorded with Zwift. Now that's about the same difference as I was getting on the Vivero. So if I did Vivero against this test, it'd be absolutely identical. But if we're looking at a couple of sprints at the end, patterns are matching exactly. The peak power's almost exactly the same on both. The Quark on the road bike is in the blue line, the trainer the purple line, and yeah, it hasn't really missed a beat. Going from the warm up to the efforts, picks up at about the same point. All the patterns are there. I can't really say much more than that. Second sprint at the end of the 25 minutes, bang on the peak power, which is pretty impressive from a trainer. To be as responsive as a chainring spider like that, that's pretty damn good. If we go down to the cadence, average cadence 85.3, 85.47, almost exactly the same. There's no dropouts. It's absolutely perfect. So I'm pretty happy with this this trainer, to be honest. It seems to be super accurate. There's no calibration needed, no spin down test, nothing. It just worked out of the box, never overheated, and yeah, what more can you say? It's a pretty good record. Credit to Cycplus. I really think they've pulled their socks up and improved. Hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you in the next one.